Revolutionary greetings, comrade. This is Comrade Pidgin Adimwengu from Kenya, the revolutionary comrade. Today again I'm back to this question. As I do my presentation today and a discussion that I want to open up a big dialogue that should lead towards some action. The question is, are we too young to lead? Are we too young to lead our continent? Are we too young to lead our countries? I'll start by giving an example of many young people across the continent and outside the continent who have done massive things politically and have changed the continent. We'll start right from Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey was at his younger age, between 30s, when he was forming UNIA. He did massive work later, transformed so many things. We'll go back to Malcolm X. Malcolm X was still at his early 30s when he did several things and inspired so many people in the leadership field. We'll go to George Padmore. We'll go to Kwame Nkrumah when they were joining CCP. He was at his younger age, at around 30s, when he was doing transformational works. We'll go back to the youngest ages, likes of Burkina Faso President Thomas Sankara. We have Patrice Lumumba, Frank Fanon, who did massive works in the political and revolutionary space. Joseph Kabila of Congo was 29. There have been so many leaders. Currently, the coup leader of Burkina Faso is also young, 36. There have been so many young leaders who have done massive works that we cannot dispute. And therefore, the question of whether we are too young to lead should be discussed in that context. Did those who were young by then didn't lead in the right direction? We still call them our heroes today, but forgetting that they started then when they were young. Some of them came in through coups. In a continent where majority are young people, it's so sad that majority who are young people cannot get space in the political arena. Some people say that young people are not that ready for leadership. They need to have some type of training in different countries, outside and within, to train young people into leadership. What is the need of training young people into leadership when the various constitutional requirements in different countries do not allow those young people to exercise or put into practice the leadership skills they are getting across in different platforms of leadership training? If there are perfect leadership programs, maybe run by African Union, that they believe can bring a good breed of leaders, younger leaders, I propose that lesson, that training, that module must first of all be passed to the current leaders of Africa, because African leaders have failed completely. They have failed the younger generation. There's a big age gap. Why is Africa too young? Too old in leadership, with so many old leaders in power? We must challenge this. And I want to say it unapologetically, that it is time that the old generation must give space for the younger generation. The elder must give that space constitutionally by allowing the young people to be elected and to run for different political offices. Which law that gives you a right to vote and denies you a right to be voted? How fair is such a law? In various countries across the continent, the constitution gives a person at the age of 18 right to vote, but deny the same person the right to be voted. Is it right? Is it legal? They'll claim that the young people are still young enough to lead. But the question is, I'm too young enough to lead, but too old enough to elect somebody who is experienced to lead. If you bestow to me that the power to vote whom you purport through your criteria to be the right leader, and that my vote will count to vote a right leader, then why do you think that I'm not the right leader? This is a serious question and a concern, but we must ask. And therefore push me to a proposal, clear proposal. Out of many conferences I've been having and virtual presentations, my proposal is clear, that the African Union must now compel and take up this task. And if they are not ready to take it, I call upon the young people across the continent to push the African Union and African member states to do away with draconian rules in their constitutions that limit a young person to go for different political offices. So when in each and every country, for example in Kenya, when one person attains the age of 18 and is given a right to vote, the constitution allows such an individual the right to be voted for any position, right from the member of county assembly to the presidency. You claim that young people are inexperienced. Okay, let's check about that. Africa is having the oldest leaders in the world, probably. So it means with age comes experience. But with that amount of experience, why can their experience transform the government of Africans into the best leadership and best countries in the world? So which experience are you asking for? Is it the experience to loot, to grab, to take away our money, offices, experience to murder, to corrupt, and to even privatize governments? Because if age was to come with proper leadership experience, then Africa ought to have been the continent that's greater than before, because it has the oldest leaders. So let's do away with myths of experience. In fact, they say that they advise the young people to join the systems of politics to learn and so that they can take over. But what do you learn in those systems? Is there any system in politics and political leadership of this Africa worth emulating? In fact, in the process you get through the process and the systems, you don't learn to be better. You learn to be the perfect breed of the current system. The system must be brought down. The Western capitalist democracy system can no longer work in African, sub-African interest, where political positions have been perceived or presented to be more of a capitalist interest and affairs, while the richest person cling to power. That takes me to the second proposal, that we must reassess our democratic space and political systems in Africa. We must, if possible, do away with all political incentives that make people go for political offices, the spaces for corruption, huge amount of salaries and allowances that makes everybody to steal all over, to pump a lot of money. For example, in Nigeria, you require to have over 50 million nairas to go for the presidency, while your salary is less than even a million naira, probably. So when will you recoup the money you invested in politics? That leads to political leaders who have to borrow from outside to be supported by dark forces that are against African progress. And therefore, when they get to power, they give back to those forces. We are controlled, remote control and command. We must do away and make all the financial illegality or discrimination that make the African politics to be expensive for the young people must also be removed. And all lucrative financial incentives that make people go for political position, not for service, but for the gains they're going to get out of that, must also be removed. We must not discriminate our young people. That takes me to the question I was talking about. Why do we have to make it expensive? Why? Why should somebody spend billions of money to campaign for a political position? Why? The inner agenda must be reversed. So my clear appeal is, going back to my question, are we too young to lead? We are not too young to lead. In fact, age hasn't helped any leadership. In fact, to those who subscribe to Christianity, Jesus Christ, who is referred to the best leader ever, was young. But the old people followed him up to date. They are still following him as followers of Jesus Christ. Why can they allow and follow other young people? So this is my presentation today, that African Union and African state must do away with age restriction for any political positions. Give us the space. We will compete. We will showcase that we are ready to take our continent forward. Because you have failed us for a long period of time, and it's time we are coming out. I call upon the solidarity behind this young generation that's coming up. The push and demand for young people for political space should not be seen as intergenerational war, while it should be seen as intergenerational dialogue that we must have now. The leadership gap is creating a lot, and many young people are now resorting to coups, blood coups, just to get into power. So if you deny the young people the legal space to get into leadership, they'll take the illegal route to get into leadership. So we must allow the young people to be part of the leadership. So I want to ask you this final question. So the older generation, who are majority in leadership, are now telling us that they want to teach us, who are the minority, to be the best leaders. So since when did the teachers become more than the students? We must be realistic. In fact, the majority must be young people. African continent and leadership, parastatals, NGOs, boards, appointment must be 70% or proportional representation to be young people. If we don't do this, the young people of this continent will wake up, will liberate their continent. And the funny thing now, we'll be fighting the older generation. So please, we come in peace. The older generation must ensure that they see what will they leave the continent to. What type of the continent are they leaving to the younger generation? You must help us build the better future for ourselves and for the generation to come. So please support us. Let's discuss. Guide us where you feel necessary. Give us everything that is required in order to produce for you a continent we want. But do not bar us. Do not be an obstacle. Do not stop us from taking over the affairs of our continent. We've done a lot of work in the climate sector. The young people have taken the climate issue across the continent and it's working. Give us the same in leadership. No amount of good intention and good policy will ever succeed in the continent without inclusion and without being pushed by the young people. Viva comrades! We are ready to take over. We are not too young to lead our continent. Thank you all.